Healing was the warm-up. This is the main fucking event. Welcome to Go Regulate Yourself, the unapologetic, unfiltered love letter you didn't know you needed. This is where mental health meets real life, where growth gets gritty, and where we stop pretending healing makes us saints. Think of it like therapy with tequila shots and a side of tough love. In this space, we're learning how to take responsibility for our shit, face the chaos of life, and become the best version of who we are. So if you're ready for your weekly what the fuck am I doing moment, let's dive in. Hi Reg Babes, welcome back to another episode on the Go Regulate Yourself podcast. My name is Brianne, I am your host, and today we are talking about bankruptcy, what exactly this looks like, what I went through in my own personal journey, and a wild story of synchronicity and how I have finally been able to heal my mother wound and my money wound all in one. So without further ado, let's dive on in. Now, I have been wanting truthfully to record this for quite some time. I have been thinking about it even before my bankruptcy was officially discharged, which happened at the beginning of April. And there's just so much to unpack here. So I'm going to hopefully do this in the most concise way possible and kind of walk you through what this looks like. Now, going all the way back to the collapse of my business and everything that happened back in 2023, which if you haven't previously had the opportunity to listen to the episode, How to Recover from Your Biggest Fuck-Ups, I highly recommend you go back and listen to that episode. It was like the beginning May-ish of 2025, I believe is when I recorded that. But regardless, it is an episode I highly recommend for you to get the full context of what this all looked like. But regardless, I had a really big company expansion that I had tried to take and was in no way, shape, or form prepared for, and it ended up being a catastrophic failure, which unfortunately left over 20 people without employment, wages were left owed, a cancel culture attempt of me online, vendors' contracts that couldn't be paid out, and so much more. So I was in a really dark period for a couple of years and a really deep financial hole. And even though the collapse of everything happened at the end of 2023, I was trying in my power to white knuckle the company. I wanted to be the savior. I was so caught up in my fears and my old beliefs of being worried about people judging me and needing to people please and prove to people that I can do this, that I ended up ultimately white knuckling that company for a good 6 to 10 months after the collapse, where I really wanted to make it go. I tried to take on the work of 20 people myself. I tried to hustle and grind, 16 plus hours a day. I was looking at every possible avenue, things that I could sell, programs I could create, anything that I could do to bring money in, be able to pay off wages, etc., that were owed, and keep the financial piece of the company afloat so that we could save it and we could keep progressing forward. And I did not want in any part of my being to go into a bankruptcy. I felt that I owed people and businesses, etc., the funds that I was not able to pay, and I felt responsible to such a deep degree for paying those funds back. And for that 6 to 10 months that followed the collapse of that business, I was really in a terrible place mentally, spiritually, physically. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was making more and more bad decisions, more mistakes, everything that I thought was right at the time to save that company, but ultimately only ended up pushing me further into a hole or further into the darkness. And so in May of 2024, I stumbled upon a spiritual coach who really helped me understand things from a different perspective without giving me any advice or telling me what to do at all in the year of our work together. The very first time that we met,
on the very first Zoom call, she asked me, do I really want this? And I thought she was talking about the business, and at the time I was so wrapped up in the idea of, like, needing to make this company go, needing to save everybody and fix all my wrongs and do all these things that instantly, without hesitation, my answer was, "Yes, of course I do. Of course I want this. Like, how could I not? I have people depending on me. The world needs this. I got things to prove. This is my nursing license. I put so much blood, sweat, and tears into this coaching company. I absolutely have to make it go." And I didn't realize at the time, which kinda clued in later, that the question of her asking me, "Do you really want this?" wasn't in relation to just the business, but it was also in relation to the life I was living, who I was showing up as, the actions that I was taking, everything in my life. But it stuck with me, that question, as all of the questions that she asked me over the months that preceded did. And I really started to question who I was, the mask that I was wearing, who I was trying to show up as, what I was trying to prove, the fears and the beliefs and all of the conditioning and programming that was running behind the surface. And I slowly started to dismantle a lot of what I thought I needed at that time. And so it was probably over the course of, I would say it was over a year, because we started working together in the May of 2024, and it wasn't until July of 2025 that I ended up ultimately agreeing to go into a bankruptcy. So in that 12 to 14 months of us working together, there was a lot of periods of time where she had asked if this was something that felt like it was in alignment for me. What if I could just allow myself to create a clean slate and move forward in order to heal? And I dug my heels in so fucking much, you guys. I felt so much shame for entering into a bankruptcy, given this scenario and the choices that I made and the decisions that led me to that point of time. And I mean, okay, retrospect, I get it. Like, when we're talking about a bankruptcy, we're talking about bad financial decisions. Most of the time, I'm gonna guess like 95% of the time when we are entering into a bankruptcy, it is because of our own choices. It is because of the bad decisions that we made, or the things that we did that led us to that moment. Whether that was something that was actually consciously within our parameters, like our ability to control, or it was something like a business collapse happened because of the economy or somebody else, etc., a lawsuit, whatever. There is things that occur within this financially that leads us to a bankruptcy. It is most of the time our responsibility, and for what we had done to move into that decision. And so I, during that 12 months, did not want a bankruptcy. First of all, I had decided to let go of the company in the fall of 2024. And I realized at that point that I also wanted to walk away from my nursing license. And so those were already two really big things that I let go of. But I was certain and destined that I was going to figure out a way to pay off the funds, even though I now had no source of income, no real business. And I tried to move into coaching, of like just focusing on my own trauma coaching and kind of doing things in a different business. But this is where a lot of that attack online and that cancel culture came in, of how dare she, make a living or do something in the same field when this last business collapsed out from underneath of her. So I was in this turmoil, this space of feeling so much shame and so much guilt and digging my heels in and really feeling responsible for everything. And it was only because of a lot of really deep nervous system work that I did in that 12 months that led me to the decision in 2025 that I was going to enter into a bankruptcy. Not just because I felt that I needed a clean slate, which, yeah, I'll be fucking honest, I did need a clean slate to be able to move forward, because the amount of debt that I incurred throughout that company collapse was, in my personal definition, impossible to pay back. the numbers had skyrocketed so high that there was no foreseeable way for me to be able to make an income, consolidate those debts, do anything in that form. And I had already previously done a consumer proposal in the midst of everything financially not working out in my favor. And so I was already in a place where finances were not looking optimal for me. And so in 2025, I made the choice, not just for that reason of needing a clean slate, but also because I realized that I was going to be able to do more good for the world if I was able to heal this money wound and give myself this forgiveness and be able to walk away from it on paper while still kind of holding that intention in my heart, which I still do today, that if I was to wake up to $1 million tomorrow, I would be able to pay back all of those debts. And that is still a dream of mine and desire of mine, a wish of mine even now being discharged from the bankruptcy. But regardless, it's beginning of 2025 and I've realized, okay, maybe after this long of digging in my heels and not getting anywhere and the debt only continuing to go up with late fees and interest and all the others, that maybe it's time now that I look at doing a bankruptcy. And so I had vetted a few companies and looked at a few different things and ultimately ended up finding a company that I wanted to go through with for the bankruptcy itself and ended up filing all that paperwork and submitting everything in July of 2025. And so when you file a bankruptcy, and what I recommend you do when you are looking into a company, if this is a position that you find yourself in life, is to definitely look at your options that are available. Have them do consultations with you, sit you down and walk you through the whole part of that. Because I felt so much shame and so much guilt and so much embarrassment for where I had gotten in my life and the damages that I had caused, that I really needed somebody to hold my hand, walk me through it, tell me what I needed to expect in this situation, how difficult it was gonna be to recover beyond that, what were the legal implications, everything. And so I think I met with 3 or 4 companies, and at the beginning, I was unsure of whether or not I should do a personal bankruptcy or a, like, company, bankruptcy, like a corporate one. And I was recommended to actually go down the personal bankruptcy route, for a lot of legality reasons, but basically everything was going to fall onto me personally in regards to the debts that I held, and so it made more sense and was less cost, associated with it to do a personal bankruptcy. Luckily for my husband and I, our house that we had sold on a rent-to-own basis is under his name predominantly, and so something major that we had was not affected by me entering into a bankruptcy because all assets, which really isn't anything, was all under his name, is all his things. And so I entered into the bankruptcy after doing these consultations and finding a company that I was comfortable with. And when you enter into a bankruptcy, you do have to pay a monthly amount, so a certain dollar figure that they determine each month for the month that you are reporting in your bankruptcy. Now, in Canada, it might be different in wherever you are in the world, but in Canada, the bankruptcy minimum term is 9 months, at which point you are likely to be discharged from if it's your first bankruptcy, you haven't made excess income, a bunch of different stipulations, things like that. If not, then you could potentially be reporting for a total of 21 months and have to pay the additional dollar figure and obviously be, reporting and stuff like that during that time. So I was really hopeful entering into the bankruptcy that I would only be 9 months because that's a long enough reporting period. And by reporting period, I mean every single month you have to fill out some expense and report sheets of like your income. So you write down all of your income, what's coming in, and then you also have to calculate all of your expenses every month and be able to provide that to your bankruptcy rep every single month. In addition to that, you also need to do 2 counseling sessions throughout that 9 months where you sit down and they walk you through, some different courses or materials, budgeting, etcetera, to make sure that you don't end up back in that position again, but it is a very rigorous process. And so, I entered into everything in July, and I began doing my monthly reports and submitting everything as we kinda went along, and as we were about 6 months in, I got a notification from my bankruptcy team that I was likely, unless anything drastically changed, to be discharged in April following the 9 months of the reporting period. And so this was a very, very interesting moment for me because things aligned here in terms of the date that I literally cannot even explain. This is such a wild thing. But the date of my expected discharge was to be April 9th. Now, that date doesn't sound like very much in your mind. You're like, okay, it's a date of the year. What's the big deal about that? Well, the wild part is that April 9th is actually my mother's birthday. Now, if you have listened to that previous episode, if you have been following along in the conversations that I've had on the podcast or social media, then you will know that my mother wound is a really big driving force of why I decided to create and expand the company to the degree that I did. I really wanted to prove to my mom, who I, by the way, haven't had a relationship with for about 13 years, I wanted to prove to her that I was worthy. Like, look at me, look what I've created, look what I did with this nursing license I never wanted that you pushed me into. Look at all the reasons why you're missing out on not loving me. And I wanted that to be a really big driving force. So the mother wound has been a really huge part of what I've been healing. And the proposed bankruptcy discharge date fell on her birthday, which immediately to me signaled a closure of my mother wound and my money wound simultaneously coming together. Of the choice of this bankruptcy being that right step for myself and being able to move in that direction of finally advancing, of finally healing, and being able to have a greater baseline for the desires and the manifestations that I want to call into my life. And so this part is really cool, but the story gets even wilder because as we approached April and I did receive confirmation that that would be the end of the bankruptcy, we got to the beginning of this month for April, and I had this little nudge inside of me to go back and look at the incorporation documents for the company that I started. Because the company that I started, even though we were like a sole proprietorship prior to the expansion, in the same year that it collapsed, I decided to take the company to a corporation level. And so when I did that, I filled out all the incorporation documents and obviously received the incorporation documents back. So I knew I had them buried somewhere in my old documents. I went on a search and I found them and I pulled them up. And this is where things get really, really weird. I had filed the incorporation request on April 9th of 2023. And I received the incorporation documents, the confirmation of it being fully incorporated on April 10th. Now, my discharge and what happened with the bankruptcy actually for this year was the discharge officially happened on April 10th, but the end of my bankruptcy occurred on April 9th. So, not only did I start the company on April 10th, technically started it on the 9th, but started it officially on the 10th of April, everything came to a close on the 9th of April. So, a closure, beginning of the year and a closure of the year happening, even though it was spread across several years. A huge, and my throat's getting choked up as I'm saying this, a huge synchronicity of the money wound, the mother wound, and being able to find forgiveness and validate my own self-worth all within this incredible timeline and cycle. And this is something that you can't fucking make up. What are the chances out of any single day in the year that I would have filed the bankruptcy and I would have entered into it, that it would land on a date that exactly 9 months later would fall on my mom's birthday? What are the fucking chances? The truth is that you really can't make this up. This is such deep proof for myself that it was the right choice. All of this was by design. The collapse of this company was a beautiful mirror of darkness to show me where I was losing so much of my power and I was giving so much of myself away. And the discharge of the bankruptcy and everything coming into alignment was proof that I made the right choice, that I'm moving in the right direction, that things are going to continue to work out in my favor. But I had to trust that entering into that bankruptcy was going to be the right thing for me. And although I'm on the other side now and I'm discharged and there's quote unquote a clean slate present, like I said, I still have that intention and desire in my heart that if the stars align in the future, I would love to be able to gift the costs of things that were unable to be paid back to the people that they are owed. And that would be such a beautiful, beautiful gift for me to receive and give out into the space of this world. Um, but at the same time as me feeling this and feeling grateful that the bankruptcy is here and that I have this clean slate, there also still is a little bit of the underlying shame and guilt and fear and embarrassment of this being something that I went through. And if you've been somebody in that space, or maybe you're somebody considering if this is your option, you might very well know what I'm talking about because this is very raw and vulnerable for me to put myself here in front of you on the screen and on the podcast and talk about the fact that I had to enter into this because of the choices that I made. And it's pretty uncomfy, I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty icky and it's feeling of like, oh, like here's all my shit and analyze it and look at it. But the truth is that I wanna continue to heal this shame and this guilt and be able to move past it entirely. I do feel such a deep sense of self-forgiveness and love for myself and for the version of me who made the choices that ultimately got us into the position that we are in now. I feel so much love for every single version of me and for the girl who thought she needed to prove herself to be loved. It's heartbreaking, but it's also beautiful in that way. And so if you're somebody in this position, like I'm wanting to speak this truth and be able to tell you this because I want you to also be able to move past the shame and the guilt. And like just as an example, like I said, it's still something I'm working through. It was only like a week ago that I got some additional comments on my social media page about needing to pay it back, even though I've been officially discharged from my bankruptcy. So, this is still something that's present, it's still, like, absorbing in my reality, and what I'm choosing to do is just basically disconnect from the noise because as much as somebody wants to tell me that I'm a bad person and I did all these things wrong and I did it by choice, etcetera, I know for a fact that I made mistakes, I know that I made some really shitty choices, I know that I put people in really difficult positions, and I'm really, really fucking sorry for that. But also, I am human. I make mistakes like anybody else in this world, and I also am entitled to feel good and feel happy and feel like I am worthy because I am. And each one of us has that within us. So, no matter what mistakes you've made, no matter what choices you've made, no matter where you have ended up at right now because of those things, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is the ability to water the grass right where you're standing so that you can see your worth, so that you can see just how enough you are, and that you don't need to keep proving things to other people. Truthfully, the only opinion that matters of you is yourself. And if you can get behind yourself and have your back and love yourself no matter what's going on, you're going to be able to make it through anything that comes your way. And so I highly, highly recommend that if you are somebody that is looking into bankruptcy as an option or even a consumer proposal, which is like a step before bankruptcy, it's basically like you agree to pay all of the people you owe money a lower amount and your like agent will negotiate that on your behalf and then you pay like a certain amount every single month and they take that and split it up amongst all of the people you owe money. If you're looking into a consumer proposal or a full on write off of a bankruptcy, then these would definitely be the steps that I would recommend taking, and looking into, different places that you could work with. Get the consultation, ask questions. Even if you feel the shame and the embarrassment and the guilt like I did, ask your questions. I remember going into each of these meetings with like a page full of questions. I needed to know the answers to everything to make a conscious choice and be able to ultimately move into that agreement or move into that decision feeling totally in alignment with it. And it is something very hard. It is very difficult to navigate, but I promise you, it's not as bad as what your head is making it out to be. There is an easier way for you to move through this, and it's by giving yourself a little bit of compassion, a little bit of joy, and a little bit of grace, no matter what you're navigating, and especially if you are navigating this. So I hope that helps to give you a little bit of an inside look into what navigating a bankruptcy really does look like. So now that I am officially done, and part of that was doing like a pre and post bankruptcy taxes as well. So now that I'm officially done with my bankruptcy and I am discharged, the next step for me now is actually moving into life after, where I get to rebuild my credit. I get to, slowly start to build up my income and hopefully work towards having way better finances in the future. And I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be an exciting place to be in, even though this is going to be technically on my record for the next 6 years, is what they say from the moment that you're discharged. I do believe that I'm ultimately going to get to a place where finances are going to be rocking and I'm going to be very comfortable in that space. And obviously, being free of hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt is a really, really big part of that too. So just a little 2 cents for today. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed my wild take on synchronicity and realizing that I'm very much in tune with healing the mother wound and the money wound. And I look forward to keeping you guys updated as I move down this road and continue to heal a lot of this shit that's coming up to the surface. So bear with me. I'm excited to have you here. And if you do have any questions about bankruptcy or otherwise, you can always feel free to drop to the comments below, connect on social media. I'm more than happy to answer some of those for you. Okay? Wishing you a fabulous rest of your day. Remember to go regulate yourself, and I will catch you in the next episode.
Hey, Rig Babe, have you heard the news? We have a brand new members-only community called Rig Babes After Dark, and you're going to want to get your booty inside here. Whether you're new to your healing journey or not, you're tired of the typical gurus and picture-perfect accounts on social media that look like they have it all figured out. You're ready for something deeper, something raw, something that makes your jaw drop open and go, yeah, I feel that way too. And in this space, we get it. We're tired of pretending that healing somehow makes us saints. We're looking for the babes who are working on themselves, who like to cuss, and ultimately are ready to have the tough, uncomfy convos that most shy away from. So this space is where Go Regulate Yourself goes off script. When you subscribe here, you're entering into a vaulted world of exclusive, member-only questions we didn't ask on the mic, unfiltered guest insights, VIP access to live streams, and behind-the-scenes moments you won't find anywhere else. This isn't the space for those who want to keep pretending they've got it all figured out. This is for the ones who admit that they don't. So to join Reg Babes After Dark, go to goregulateyourself.substack.com or visit the link below in the show notes. We have 1-week free trials available for you to jump into the space, check it out, and join us for some extra juicy behind-the-scenes moments. We cannot wait to connect with you and look forward to seeing you after dark. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Go Regulate Yourself podcast. If you felt called out in the best way, I would be so honored if you drop below and leave a review or share this with a friend who needs to hear it too. And remember, regulate yourself before you wreck yourself. I'll catch you in the next episode. Mwah.